Most people go through life believing their brains are fixed, like a hardwired machine that can't be changed. That belief alone stops them from pushing forward, trying new things, or even imagining that they could become someone better. But here's the truth that science has shown us, and it's something that should shift the way you see everything. Your brain is constantly changing. It's not stuck. It's not static. It's adaptable. That's the power of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on how you use it. Now, when you hear the word rewire, it can sound a bit clinical, but think about it this way. Every time you learn a new skill, break an old habit, or respond differently to a situation, your brain is literally changing. Neurons that fire together wire together. So if you're repeatedly thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, reacting the same way to setbacks, you're reinforcing that pattern. But if you choose to show up differently, even once, you interrupt that loop. And with consistent repetition, you build a new one. The process of rewiring doesn't happen all at once. The brain needs signaling, consistency, and time. It responds to what you pay attention to. When you lock your focus onto something that matters to you, something meaningful, the brain starts to adapt to help you get better at that thing. Whether it's mastering a subject, developing mental toughness, or improving your ability to stay calm under pressure, all of it is trainable. The challenge is, most people don't give it enough time or intention. They try once or twice, feel the same old resistance, and assume change isn't possible. But resistance is part of the rewiring process. It's your brain saying, "This is unfamiliar. Are you sure you want to go this way?" And your job is to say, "Yes, keep going. Here's something else. Change doesn't require giant leaps. In fact, the brain prefers small, repeated inputs. Tiny, consistent actions that signal, 'This is who I'm becoming.' You don't have to overhaul your entire identity overnight, but you do need to show up daily in alignment with the version of you that you're trying to build. Want to become more disciplined? Don't just think it, act it. Do one hard thing every day that proves to your brain you're capable of choosing progress over comfort. Over time, that becomes your default wiring. You also need to be aware of your internal language. Your self-talk is one of the most powerful inputs your brain receives. If you're telling yourself things like, "I'm not smart enough," "I'm not good at this," or "This is just who I am," those statements aren't just thoughts, they are instructions. Your brain listens and builds circuitry to match them. But the moment you start saying, "This is difficult, but I'm getting better," or "I'm learning how to handle this," you're giving your brain new instructions, and it will begin to follow them. There's also a timing element to all of this. The brain is most plastic when you're alert and paying full attention. That means deep focus isn't just about productivity. It's a biological trigger for change. So if you really want to rewire your brain, give it your full attention during the learning process. Avoid multitasking. Turn off distractions. When you're deeply engaged, the brain flags that moment as important and starts rewiring faster. And when you pair that focus with sleep, especially deep, high-quality sleep, that's when the changes get locked in. That's when rewiring becomes long-term transformation. This isn't about hacks. This is biology. Your biology is designed to help you grow, adapt, and evolve, but only if you meet it halfway. If you don't like how you've been thinking, feeling, or performing, you're not stuck with it. You're not broken. You're not behind. You just haven't given your brain the right inputs consistently enough to become someone different. The ability to rewire is already inside you. It's built into the system. You just have to decide whether you'll use it or not. One of the most overlooked drivers of performance and personal growth is the environment you're in. People think success is all about willpower or motivation, but your surroundings, what you see, hear, and interact with every day, have a powerful, almost invisible influence on your brain. The reality is, your brain is always scanning the environment for cues about what matters, what's urgent, and where to direct its energy. And if your environment is filled with distractions, scattered signals, or even subtle triggers of stress and comfort, your ability to focus, learn, and grow is compromised before you even begin. The good news is that this works both ways. Just as a chaotic environment can pull you off course, a structured, intentional one can prime your brain for high performance. Your brain wants clarity. It thrives on structure and signaling. So when you design your space with purpose, whether that's your study area, your office, or even just your daily routine, you're not just organizing your life, you're training your brain to enter the right state at the right time. One of the most effective things you can do is build a consistent workspace that signals, "This is where I focus." It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't even have to be big. What matters is that your brain begins to associate that space with deep work. Over time, the moment you sit down in that space, your brain knows. It's time to engage. The lighting matters. The soundscape matters. The absence of clutter matters. All of these things create what's called a context cue, a signal that tells your nervous system what mode it should be in. Let's take light as an example. Morning light, especially natural sunlight, sends a powerful alert signal to your brain. It sets your circadian rhythm, boosts your alertness, and even elevates mood and motivation. So if you start your day with dim lighting, scrolling your phone in bed, your brain stays in a foggy, reactive state. But if you step outside, get 5-10 minutes of bright sunlight in your eyes, and anchor that to the beginning of your learning or work session, you're giving your brain a biological head start. You're saying, "Wake up, we've got important things to do." Noise is another factor people often underestimate. Your brain can only handle so much sensory input at once. Background noise, especially unpredictable sounds like notifications, people talking, or random alerts, forces your brain to work harder just to stay on task. That extra effort drains cognitive energy. But when you set your environment up to be quiet, or use consistent sounds like ambient music or white noise, the brain stops wasting energy on filtering distractions and shifts more of its resources toward learning and problem solving. Another key component of designing your environment is removing friction. If it takes you 10 minutes to find your notes, 5 minutes to log in, and 3 minutes to silence all the noise around you, you're spending brain energy before you've even started the real work. That's what I call cognitive leakage, wasted energy that could have been used for growth. But if everything is where it needs to be, if your tools are ready, your workspace is clear, and you have a defined starting point, you conserve that energy and channel it into meaningful effort. Even the time of day you choose to engage in deep work matters. There's a window early in the day, typically within the first 4-6 hours after waking, when the brain is naturally primed for focus. That's not just anecdotal, it's neurobiological. Your levels of alertness, attention, and dopamine are naturally elevated during this window. So if you can align your most important work, studying, creating, problem solving, within that block of time, your results will compound faster. You're not pushing against your biology, you're working with it. Ultimately, designing your environment isn't about controlling everything around you, it's about reducing the number of decisions your brain has to make and increasing the number of signals that support the state you want to be in. The more intentional you are with your surroundings, the more reliable your focus becomes. You don't need to force discipline every single day if your environment is already nudging you in the right direction. Focus isn't just a mindset, it's a system, and your environment is where that system begins. Stress has a reputation problem. Most people hear the word and immediately associate it with burnout, anxiety, or something they need to avoid. But the truth is, not all stress is harmful. In fact, the right kind of stress in the right amount can actually be one of the most powerful tools for learning, growth, and rewiring your brain. The key is understanding how to use it, not run from it. See, your brain evolved to respond to challenge. When you encounter a situation that pushes you out of your comfort zone, something uncertain, difficult, or time-sensitive, it triggers a stress response. Your heart rate increases, your breathing changes, and certain neurochemicals like norepinephrine and adrenaline begin to surge. This isn't your body shutting down, it's your body gearing up. In that state, the brain becomes more plastic, more alert, and more capable of locking in new information and behaviors. That's a window of opportunity if you know how to lean into it. But here's the catch. Most people experience stress passively. They let it take over, and instead of using it as fuel, they spiral into overwhelm. The shift happens when you decide to face stress with intention. When you say, "This is hard, but I'm staying here," you flip the script. You begin to train your nervous system to handle pressure instead of flee from it. And each time you do that, even in small ways, you're making yourself more resilient. You're wiring your brain to handle more challenge with more control. There's a concept called adaptive stress. It's the kind of stress that helps you grow. You don't get it by living in a constant state of panic or anxiety. You get it through short bursts of challenge followed by recovery. Think about cold exposure, public speaking, or taking on a difficult task you've been avoiding. These are moments that stretch your capacity. And when you voluntarily step into that discomfort, you teach your brain a powerful lesson. Discomfort is not danger. That distinction rewires how you respond the next time stress shows up. One of the most effective tools for navigating stress is your breath. It sounds simple, maybe too simple, but your breathing is a direct line into your nervous system. When you extend your exhales just a little longer than your inhales, you activate a calming response in the body. That helps you stay present during stress instead of being hijacked by it. It's not about eliminating the stress, it's about learning how to stay in it just long enough for your brain to adapt. And then comes recovery. If you want your brain to actually rewire from those high-stress moments, you need to follow them with downtime. That's when the changes get consolidated. That's when the body recalibrates and the brain decides, okay, that new response, that's the one we're going to keep. So it's not just about pushing harder. It's about pushing, then recovering, then pushing again. That's the rhythm of building a stronger mind. So instead of trying to live a stress-free life, what if you aim to build a brain that could handle stress better than ever? Not by avoiding it, but by using it strategically, intentionally, as a tool to grow sharper, tougher, and more unstoppable. One of the most misunderstood forces driving human behavior is dopamine. Most people think of it as the chemical behind pleasure or reward, but dopamine is really about motivation. It's about pursuit. It's the signal your brain uses to say, "That's worth going after." And if you want to build consistency, momentum, and long-term drive, understanding how to work with dopamine, rather than being unconsciously controlled by it, is a game changer. Dopamine rises in anticipation of something meaningful, not just when you get the thing itself. That means the most powerful way to sustain motivation isn't by chasing rewards, it's by learning how to reward the process. When you link dopamine to the effort itself, instead of just the outcome, you train your brain to enjoy the path, not just the finish line. And that makes you far more likely to show up again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. That's where real progress lives. Let's take an example. Say you're studying for an exam, building a new skill, or training your mind to stay focused longer. If you only feel good when you ace the test or reach the end of the goal, you're wiring your brain to see the effort as a cost, something to be endured. But if you can learn to attach a sense of satisfaction, meaning, or even pride to the act of studying, to the act of staying focused, you're literally training your brain to crave the process, and that kind of motivation lasts. This is one of the reasons why people lose momentum so quickly. They chase hits of dopamine through distractions, checking phones, scrolling, multitasking, and over time, the brain becomes conditioned to seek fast rewards. That pattern trains the brain to avoid long-term challenges because they don't deliver that same immediate spike. But when you start to control where and how dopamine is released, you start to control your behavior at a deeper level. You regain agency over what drives you. One way to do this is through deliberate celebration of small wins. It might sound cliché, but when you consciously acknowledge progress, even minor progress, You're reinforcing the circuit that says, "This matters, keep going." Your brain learns through repetition and reinforcement. Every time you complete a difficult task and then pause to recognize it, even for a few seconds, you're strengthening motivation from the inside out. Another method is goal setting, but not just setting goals, breaking them down into meaningful, actionable steps. Dopamine is released when you feel like you're making progress, so if your goals are too abstract or far away, your brain won't register them as attainable. But when you hit step 1, then step 2, and then step 3, your brain tracks those wins, and your motivation begins to build on itself. It becomes a feedback loop. There's nothing wrong with wanting results. But if you build your motivation system solely on the outcome, you'll always be chasing and never fully arriving. If you build it on the process, you'll become unstoppable, not because you have more willpower, but because your brain is aligned with the path you're walking. You don't need more motivation. You need to train your brain to find meaning in the effort itself. One of the most powerful ways to rewire your brain is to shift the story you tell yourself about who you are. Identity isn't fixed, it's built, reinforced, and updated based on what you do consistently. Every action you take sends a signal to your brain about the kind of person you are becoming, and over time, those signals begin to form patterns. Those patterns become habits, and those habits become identity. When people say, "I'm just not disciplined," or "I'm not confident," what they're really describing is a current state of wiring. It's not a permanent truth. It's simply the product of repeated behaviors and thoughts over time. But here's where it gets interesting. The moment you do something that goes against that old identity, even in a small way, you introduce a new possibility. And with enough repetition, that new action becomes the new story. This is why repetition matters so much. Your brain doesn't change because you have a big insight or hear the perfect motivational quote. It changes when you show up again and again and again, doing the things that align with the version of you that you want to become. When you make your bed every morning, when you finish that last page of a book, when you hold your focus for 5 more minutes, that's not just productivity, that's identity construction. You're teaching your brain, "This is who I am now." And it's not just about the action, it's also about the reflection. If you move through your day on autopilot, even doing the right things, but never stop to register what those actions mean, the brain doesn't lock them in as clearly. But when you take even a minute to reflect, to journal, to acknowledge the effort, to ask yourself, "What did I just do and what does that say about me?" you give those moments weight. That's when the shift becomes deeper. That's when a habit becomes part of your identity. It's a simple equation. Behavior plus reflection equals belief, and belief is what drives future action. So if you want to change how you think and feel about yourself, don't just focus on the end goal. Focus on what you're doing each day that confirms, "I am becoming the kind of person who shows up, who follows through, who pushes forward." Because once your brain starts to believe that, everything else begins to shift. The final piece that often gets overlooked when it comes to rewiring your brain is consistency. Not perfection, not intensity, just showing up again and again, even when it's not exciting, even when you don't feel like it. That repeated action, done with intention, is what carves new neural pathways. It's what transforms effort into instinct, practice into identity, and potential into actual performance. There's something powerful that happens when you keep doing the work even when motivation isn't there. Your brain learns that the behavior doesn't depend on feeling good. It depends on a decision, and that decision, made day after day, creates reliability within your system. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, "Do I feel like it today?" and instead start acting from a deeper place, from commitment. That's when real change begins to take hold. The truth is, your brain doesn't need you to make giant leaps. It needs signals that you're not giving up. Even on the off days, especially on the off days, because those are the days that define the edge, those are the moments where resilience is built. Every time you keep going despite resistance, you're reinforcing a message: this matters enough to continue. And the more you do that, the stronger that circuit becomes. Progress often looks quiet. It looks like doing the same thing over and over again until something clicks. It looks like showing up when no one's watching, no one's clapping, and no reward is guaranteed. But the brain is tracking all of it. It's watching for patterns, and when it sees consistency, it starts to lock that behavior in. It becomes easier. It becomes faster. It becomes automatic. That's how you move from effort to flow. It's easy to underestimate the compounding effect of small, repeated actions, but the brain doesn't. Every rep counts, every focused session, every moment of discomfort leaned into, it all adds up, not just in results, but in identity, in belief, and in capability. Consistency isn't about doing everything right. It's about not quitting when things feel messy or slow, because the brain isn't asking for perfect effort. It's just asking for repeated effort. When you keep showing up, you're proving to yourself that this isn't just a phase. It's who you are becoming, and that's how you rewire your brain to become unstoppable. The truth is, becoming unstoppable isn't about being fearless or flawless. It's about learning how to work with your brain, not against it. It's about setting up your environment with intention, using stress as fuel, turning effort into identity, and staying consistent even when no one's watching. Every small action, every moment of discomfort embraced, every decision to keep going. That's how you rewire your system, not overnight, but over time. The brain is always adapting. The question is, what are you training it to become? If you commit to the process, to showing up, to pushing just a little further each day, you won't just improve, you'll become the kind of person who doesn't stop, and that's what makes you truly unstoppable.